Hi pilots, welcome back, or welcome here if this is your first time joining. This is my follow-up to my first free flight review in which I kind of showed off the airplanes. This one is going to be short and sweet, and it really is to kind of show off the helicopters that are available in Flight Simulator 2024. I've went ahead and picked kind of a short flight. This is a scenic flight in the Alps. I feel like that is a good thing to showcase, especially because, as we've seen before, one of the problems that it has is it doesn't really load scenery in cities in very well, and I will show that at the end as well, which, especially with helicopters at lower altitudes, makes for, I'd say, a less enjoyable experience. So first, we're just going to set ourselves to the daytime. We want to go with clear skies, and that way you kind of get a good view of everything. As far as choice goes, now last time I've shown all of the options that you have as far as it goes with airplanes, and there are a lot of airplanes available. When you click on helicopters, not so much. One thing you have to remember when you're looking at this is that some of these models, such as the 206B3, the 222B, the Hunter, it's just an Apache, as well as these two Hueys, those are all mods. This indicates that they were originally made for Flight Simulator 2020. They do work in 2024 as well, but those are all extra. If you look at the absolute basis, you have the little Robinson R66, the G2, and the 407 and the H25. Those are going to be like your passenger type helicopters that you have available. You do have the Chinook as well as the Sky Crane available. Those are available in career mode as well, and we'll review that at another time. These by themselves, you can fly them. You can put the Chinook in a passenger configuration as well. But ultimately, if you're just doing some sightseeing, you're going to want to pick, a regular helicopter that's a little more maneuverable, can pick up a little more speed. Now, you do have choice in variants. Not every helicopter has the same amount of variants. The H-125 is kind of the show pony when it comes to the helicopters. It has the rescue hoist, a cargo hoist, passenger configuration, agricultural sprayer, or a rescue configuration. And if you're wondering what the difference is between a rescue hoist and the rescue configuration, this one, unfortunately I can't twist the plane around, but on the backside has a hoist that is used to lift people up. The rescue configuration does not have that. It expects someone to just get out of the back and walk, so you have to land, which at some point we will cover in career mode. In our case, we're just going to go ahead and pick a passenger configuration. Now, whatever paint job you want, it does change depending on which variant you pick. For example, you see all of these options for a standard passenger configuration. Now, if we swap it over to, say, a rescue, we suddenly have way fewer. So we can go ahead and pick this. If we look at our fuel and payload, we can once again make sure that all the seats are empty the cargo out. It makes the performance a little bit better. So now that we have all of that set, we are gonna go ahead and move forward, and we're gonna go start this flight at this time. One thing I will always admit to is that loading into the game itself It's an experience. It sometimes feels like it takes a little bit too long, and it's not very smooth. So, as you can see, it just kind of hangs and waits for everything else to load in. And there we go. Now the first thing we're going to do here, while we're starting, is we're going to go ahead and shut the engine off. There we go. You can hear it switching off. We can look around. I'm going to set this back to our flight planner so that when we do take off, we can actually see where we're supposed to go. So, that's what we're flying in today. And you can once again see the scenery from a distance is pretty good. Up close, we're not great. But let's go ahead and check it out. So the first thing we're going to have to do is, I think I turned the rotor brake on, didn't I? We're going to have to fully unlock that, or it's just not going to do anything, and start the engine up again. You can tell it's really doing its best there, and while it's working on that, we can take a closer look around the cockpit. So, instrument panel with these is a lot simpler, which is fine. That's kind of an expected outcome. Don't have nearly as many buttons as your average airplane. You can, however, put your flight plan. You can put a little map up here, which in some ways is a little superfluous because we do have the EFB tablet available right there, but it's a nice little feature. I think we're almost ready to start taking off. Make sure that one's set to 0. Open. You can turn your cabin lights on if it makes you happy. Useless during the day, terrifying at night because you suddenly won't see what's out there. Now you will see this little drawstring here on the front of the helicopter. That's just kind of an indicator, and if you'll watch it while we're taking off, you'll see for yourself. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little bit of power. And we are off. And from this height, I'll show from outside of the cockpit. It is very pretty. And this is a fairly dense place, so it's surprising how nicely it loaded in. After this, maybe we can check out, say, Paris, and you can compare for yourself. I am flying with a Flightstick. I do always feel like the controls are overly sensitive for helicopters. It's not always very smooth, but that's okay. From here on out, we can just start heading towards the mountains. You can kind of see what it looks like along the way. There is a very nice little reflection in the water there. In general, the water looks pretty good, I'd say. We can take it down a little bit if I don't crash, which is very likely. And you can see it throws up a little wash when you get close enough. If I just slow it down, I can slowly lower it a little bit. Like that. Little boats in the water. I think overall they did a nicer job on the airplanes, the models that they made, all of the paint jobs on them, as well as in general the natural areas like these mountain ranges are gorgeous. The details that they have in cities, as far as I'm concerned, are the lowest quality item. But overall, I think this world looks really beautiful. Go ahead and set this one to follow us. We're still somewhat on course. I think we covered this last time as well, but if you don't want to spend the entire 20 minutes flying over to that mountain, you can increase the sim rate. As I did mention, the controls for helicopters are very sensitive, so if I increase it like this, you'll see exactly. It goes very wrong very quickly. So setting it at 1.5 times is not so bad. Anything above that, you better have a very clear path of where you're going, or you might end up in the side of a mountain. But at this pace, we can make it to the top of the mountain and go check it out. Another thing I will give them credit for is that the sound design is really good. I did turn down the sound a little bit for this recording, so you might not hear it as well, but when you're going around the plane, or around the helicopter, the sound that you hear from the turbine, from the rotors, from all of that, it's very accurate. Like it sounds correct. It sounds like it's supposed to sound. And the sound changes nicely while you're going around it, so I'll give them kudos for that. As we're climbing above the tree lines, you can start to kind of notice where the terrain of, forest gives way to just rocks and a little bit of grass. I think the textures are decent. They're not crazy good, but they are good enough for a flight simulator. Especially when you consider that with helicopters, you're lower to the ground. It's probably very hard to create a sim where everything loads in really fast, unless it's stored on your hard drive. We are still at 1.5 times sim rate, so it's a little jerky. Now inside of the cockpit, I personally think the sights, the sounds, the smells, everything kind of lines up with what you expect from flying a helicopter in this game, right? Now we're gonna go ahead and try to head towards one of the biggest mountaintops here. And for anyone curious so far, to reiterate in case you haven't watched the previous video, I do use the Turtle Beach VelocityOne Flightstick. I think it's a great flight stick. For the throttle controls, I still have the Saitek. It's basically 3 controls, one for mixture, one for RPMs, one for throttle. We've been flying at 75% throttle. We're going to go ahead and go to 100 just to actually make it over this mountain. I think throttle controls are pretty good for helicopters. With a keyboard and mouse, I could not get the thing off the ground. With a flight stick, it's been a lot easier. Now that weird arrowhead looking thing should probably be an alpine lake. Right there. I forgot that the sim rate was set that high. When we lower it, we can go a little bit closer without absolutely flying into everything. The closer you get to that dam, the more you realize it's not actually a geometric shape or anything. It is literally painted on. But the little house in the distance, they made that one. That's somewhat disappointing. It would make more sense to build the dam rather than the little houses surrounding it. So we'll go ahead and move on from here and see if we can make it a little bit further up into the mountains. I will say you sometimes see overlapping textures and it can be hard to discern whether some of them are because of shadows, as you can see right in front of us, but some are also just because different satellite imagery was used during times where there was or was not any snow. And it can sometimes create kind of jarring imagery. In general, they do a good job of not having that happen, but one place where you can very obviously see that is if you ever fly over the Grand Canyon. We can already see our landing spot in the distance, so we can set throttle to 75 and just give it the beans, so to speak. I see our landing spot coming up over there on the right. Let's go ahead and slow it down. It looks like it's that little cabin that is somewhat in front of us and a little bit lower. So let's see how close we can get to landing there. Really? Well, I don't think that that's really our landing spot, but this is what it's giving us. Somewhat clear. We are not somewhat clear. We're just gonna park right up on the hillside. It is a lot of messing around with the throttle. It goes through very gentle phases and then suddenly will just drop itself like a ton of bricks. So, there we go. And there we go. Let's go ahead and shut that one down. And yeah, you can kind of tell this is very pretty. This is very well done. So, in career mode, you do have the opportunity to do these types of rescue missions, cargo missions, all sorts of things that are in mountainous areas like this. And they are a lot of fun. So I definitely give that a 10 out of 10. However, let's go see what it looks like when we go into a city like Paris. Now when you're on the map here, this is jarring to see all of the little helipads. You can kind of zoom out and they will slowly start disappearing. In case I haven't mentioned it in the previous ones, these ones that have a star by them, the one thing I've noticed is that these are either very fun or very scenic airports. Not necessarily major airports, but just like, hey, you should fly from here at some point. And if we zoom in again, we can see, you know, Paris is big. It has a lot of points of interest. We're gonna set this as our departure, and we will pick a different helicopter for this one, just so that you get the experience. Again, this is an add-on. It's not free. It's not included with the base game. If we start there, we should be able to make our way to the Eiffel Tower and get kind of a view of what it looks like, right? Let's keep the flight conditions nice and clear, and we'll load that one in again. Now, if you want to see where satellite imagery overlaps, the top of Paris is a very good example here. So you can see that it's loading some of it in, but large parts of it are a different color and a different layout than the rest of the map. It uses, you know, different satellite imagery from different dates, and it's very obvious. So sometimes you will go between slightly different daytime cycles, and it will be obvious to you that those, you know, the imagery used is from different dates. But I think in general, a city like Paris is fairly well done as far as the landmarks go. So if you're flying an airplane or if you're flying at higher altitude, those things will all look great. But once we load in, get off the ground, we'll see what the rest of the world looks like that loads in around all of these landmarks and makes up the rest of the city. And there we go. That's the most jarring way to enter any game ever. Keep in mind, we were supposed to spawn in. There we go. That is one of many oddities. It's going to torpedo itself into a building. I have no control over that. As you can see, the ready to fly button is still showing in the bottom right corner. I'm going to go and hit it. And let's pump the brakes on this thing. Whoop. It's basically fighting me. So, anyone that remembers, we picked the French Army Hospital as our point to spawn in. We were supposed to start on a helipad. As you can see, we did not spawn on a helipad. We spawned on top of someone's barracks, and the whole thing torpedoed itself into a problem before we even had a chance to touch the stick. Now that we're up in the air and we have some semblance of control back over this thing, we can actually do a little bit of sightseeing. So this is the city. As you can see here, all the landmarks are highlighted. I'll switch that off because watching blue dots all day is boring. And we're going to gently take a look up here. First of all, the tree shapes. That's jarring. The cars. Those are not objects, those are just painted on the ground. The buildings are not entirely building shaped. They're missing basic geometric shapes. Like these. It will give you a headache if you look at it long enough. So we're not going to look at it long enough because I think it's obvious. It's ugly, it's weird, it's not done well. It needs to be redone at this point. Now, in the distance you can see the Eiffel Tower itself already, so we can head that way. Fairly certain this, then, is Montparnasse Tower? Yes, it is. Okay. Somewhere near there is a graveyard filled with lots of famous folks that are buried in Paris, including writers, poets, all the like. Very much worth a visit. The best view of Paris is not from the Eiffel Tower, it is rather from that tower. Remember that if you ever go to Paris. And so here you have the whole area surrounding the Eiffel Tower, and plainly spoken, that looks like hot garbage. But the tower itself, well, that looks pretty cool. And that's very well done. The same with the area in front of it. A lot of things here leave a lot to be desired. The Seine with its famous riverboats, these bridges look nothing like this in real life. The boats are clipping and crashing into each other. I'm not sure how to describe this other than just visual vomit. It's not a good experience, but another landmark, and the building is gorgeous. Now, I should say, I would not expect every single building to be perfect. Here's another great example. These buildings do not even have textures on them. They just exist in time and space. They're otherwise completely pointless. You can see it's starting to load in some of the details, but it just can't load them in fast enough. We're not flying extremely fast, and again, as a reminder, I do have a 1 gig internet line, so not slow. It should run just fine. And if you spend enough time waiting, it will eventually load in the entire world. But even then, it will remain kind of this ugly. Because some things it just doesn't get right, such as trees that are just amalgamous blobs. It's disappointing. However, does it take away from the fun of flying helicopters? Absolutely not. I love flying helicopters. I am often a little disappointed by the fact that they don't have more of them in-game. And the choice in the marketplace as well for... Oh no, it's yelling at me about my altitude. The choice in the store for additional helicopters is very limited. I would not just randomly go out and buy helicopters and models that were designed for Flight Simulator 2020. Some work, some don't, some have quirks. Realistically, make do with what you've got, and what you've got is not a lot. But that said, I do really enjoy the flying in this game. I really enjoy the helicopters. It's a lot of fun. You can just kind of tell it's struggling to load in the world at any speed. I think realistically, if you enjoy flying games, Flight Simulator 24 is a really good flying game. If you enjoy helicopter games specifically, this probably at this time is not the game for you. I definitely wouldn't recommend that you spend any kind of money on the game. If you wanted to try the game, I would probably recommend that you just get Game Pass. Flight Simulator 24 is on Game Pass. Ah, there you go. Just a random boat sideways. But yes, if you would like to try the game, I would just recommend trying it out on Game Pass, seeing if you like it, seeing if it works with the hardware that you have. Like I said during the last video, the lowest common denominator for controls in this game is going to be using a controller. I don't look down on it. I think it works. Controllers work better than keyboard and mouse for this game if you intend to play it that way. So I definitely recommend... There we go. We broke our landing gear. I definitely recommend that you give it a run on Game Pass, try it out for yourself, and see if this is something that you could live with. Your experience might be slightly different. Your world might load in a little better than this. But as far as helicopters go, I have a great time with it, but I absolutely do not recommend this for others.